This is kind of breaking news ish, since it just kind of came about. But Sony has now picked up Legendary Pictures, and we have an article pulled up over here. I want to pull up from the Hollywood Reporter, and I want to read a little bit of this. Legendary Entertainment, Hollywood's high-profile producer and co-financer of big budget studio fare, has found a new partner in Sony Pictures. And of course, Legendary, me and Shane were just talking a little bit. Legendary does, King Kong, Godzilla, a whole bunch of that big CG fanfare kind of stuff. Under the terms of the deal, Legendary's movies will be distributed and marketed globally by Sony, excluding China, where Legendary East will handle all those duties. Sony will also handle home entertainment and TV distribution for those films. Sony does not have a streaming service, and Legendary will continue to partner with other companies for streaming as it has with Netflix and Enola Home. So we could end up seeing some of this stuff on HBO Max. Wouldn't that be hilarious? But this is very interesting news because, again, we know there was the whole debacle where Warner Brothers decided to put all their stuff onto streaming while simultaneously putting it in the theaters. Legendary sued them, told them they would sue them, told them not to do it. Warner Brothers said we're doing it anyway. They sued. Obviously, as most of these things do, it was settled, for an undisclosed amount, of course. But yeah, I imagine Legendary was paid a ton of money, probably more than if they would have just, did what they promised to do when they signed the contracts with Legendary and just put them in theaters alone. But yeah, so we kind of knew that this was going on a little bit, and we knew that they had issues with Warner Brothers, just like we seen with Christopher Nolan, right? Same kind of issues, and he left and he went to Universal. But these guys are deciding to team up with Sony, which is really interesting to me. And I also, it does, interest me as well to think that Sony doesn't have a streaming app still. It's pretty crazy. Sony does have a lot of content, I think. They also own I can't remember what it's called right now, but one of those like Tubi or Crackle. It's Crackle. Sony owns Crackle, and they quite often will put their movies like Ghost Rider, their old, stuff like that, up on there for free. Crackle is a free streaming service. But yeah, so maybe they would turn that into a Sony service or something, especially with a new deal like this with Legendary in the making, right? Because now you have even more content that you could bring into your Sony streaming app. And it seems like that's the thing to do right now. To be honest with you, I'm completely glad that they're not doing a streaming app and there is no Sony streaming app, because the last thing I need is another $4 or $5 or $10.99 a month bill for one of these things. But yeah, this is exciting for Sony. We know that they're also doing their PlayStation Studio and stuff. So they're making some moves in this industry. And as we often talk about with these other businesses like Sony and Amazon and Apple, movies isn't what their, main income is and their source of money. So they're not really worried about kind of throwing money at this sometimes. So this is interesting, and I'm glad to hear it for Sony. Shane, you're hearing this. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think this is actually a match made in heaven. I think they're both similar, where they make crap, and every once in a while they'll pull out a decent film. So, this is a big score for Sony because Legendary is actually, besides, the big CG monster movies they like to put out, they do really like to give, really good directors shots too. Not only you mentioned Nolan, but, Spike Lee, I love Danny Boyle, Michael Mann, Guillermo del Toro. These are all big hitters, and they've done films with them in the past. So not only do they bring in their big budgeted amusement park ride movies, right, but they also bring in some of the more serious and down to earth stuff too. So Sounds great for Sony. Sounds like it was a big loss to Warner. I'd like to see how this is handled because you're right. I mean, Warner could be laughing because all that stuff's going to come to HBO Max once it's finally in streaming. So we'll see how it plays out.
Right. Pardon the pun, but if you remember what their logo looks like, it's kind of legendary.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's you just
it's the Celtic kind of.
Yeah. You kind of it's just as much as you would remember any of the big names, you kind of when you see it, you kind of know what to expect a little bit too. Yeah. So I think it brings a lot of cachet into it. What do you think the odds are this increases the chance that Sony gets a streaming service? Before I let you take that, during CinemaCon, which is for all the theater owners to kind of get to show you for the people making the movies, the studios get to show the theater owners, hey, this is what we're going to be giving you guys this year to put in your movies. Sony was very adamant that they were not interested in getting involved in any streaming shit at all, and that if they had stuff that was really popular like Spider-Man, they would license it out like they always have. But what do you think? Do you think?
I could see them sticking with that for a while. I mean, like Sony's such a big company, they don't need to make money off these movies. So, there's less of a demand on their end to make a streaming service because now you got to talk about server space and, updates and running some sort of site. And then
bunch of people you're hiring.
Yeah, no kidding. So
millions of dollars.
They could probably balance it out by licensing this material to the other streaming services. They probably have smarter than people than we do that have a chart that shows this is how much money you'd make if you started your streaming service in 5 years because you're probably going to take some hits just to get it going.
Right.
Versus how much money you're going to bring in just 5 years of licensing.
Right.
And they probably take a look at this and it's either the same or not worth it.
Right. Or tanking, losing a bunch of money. And it would be different too if, this was 5 or 6 years ago or something like that, right? Because then Disney Plus wasn't here yet, and HBO Max wasn't here yet.
I think if they were going to do it, I think the big kind of boom was right around the pandemic. That's like right when Paramount Plus, they were really pushing it.
I think if I'm Sony, I partner with one of those guys and say, hey, let's have a Sony-like category on Netflix, and we'll let you guys have all our stuff if you put it all up there.
I'm sure they'll consider that. I bet there's a bidding process.
Oh, yeah, that's the problem is that everything's worth something different. So they're like, no, we're not. We want to bid out every last one of these things we have.
And who knows what kind of legal, if it's even worth it, because they might have signed. Because I think it's Peacock that has Ghostbusters, which is Sony. So who knows how long Peacock signed that for? It could be a year, it could be a couple months, it could be 5 years. And so they're over here. It's like, if we start an app, we won't have
sometimes
Ghostbusters.
they don't sign exclusive rights deals either. So you could see it on Netflix and which is always kind of a bummer for a streaming service because you're expecting or you're wanting people to come to your thing, but if it's on 3 things for free, then it makes it hard. But yeah, interesting news. Like I said, I'm super excited for Sony and Legendary Pictures to be able to get out from under Warner Brothers and get somewhere clearly, at least where they found a deal that they're excited about. And yeah, we'll see how all this bodes moving forward with Sony and Legendary Pictures. But yeah, let me know down in the comment section what your guys' thoughts are on this, about them buying it, about them leaving WB. Doesn't matter to you. Maybe it matters none. But definitely let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below.